The morning sun cast long shadows across the United Defense Coalition headquarters in Geneva when the first reports started coming in. Admiral Sarah Chen sat in her office reviewing the latest colony reports from the outer systems when her aide burst through the door without knocking. "Admiral, you need to see this," Lieutenant Morrison said, his face pale as he handed her a data pad. Long-range sensors picked up something massive approaching Earth. Sarah looked at the readings and felt her blood run cold. The object was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, and it was definitely artificial. More importantly, it was decelerating as it approached the solar system, which meant it was under intelligent control. "How long until it reaches Earth orbit?" she asked, already reaching for her secure communication device. 6 hours, ma'am," Morrison replied. "At current speed." Sarah immediately activated the Coalition's emergency protocols. Within minutes, every major world leader was connected through secure channels. The President of the Americas, the European Chancellor, the Asian Federation Prime Minister, and representatives from every other major power looked at her through their screens with growing concern. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sarah began, "we have a situation. An unknown vessel of unprecedented size is approaching Earth. Based on its trajectory and deceleration pattern, it appears to be making a deliberate approach to our planet." The discussions that followed were tense but brief. Humanity had always known this day might come. Ever since they had developed faster-than-light travel 15 years ago and begun establishing colonies beyond the solar system, they had wondered when they might encounter other intelligent life. The massive ship, which Earth scientists quickly determined was over 50 kilometers long, took up position in high Earth orbit. For several hours, it simply sat there, silent and ominous. Then it began broadcasting. The transmission came in perfect English, though the voice that spoke was clearly not human. It was deep and resonant, with an odd harmonic quality that made it sound like multiple beings speaking in unison. "Attention, primitive species of the third planet," the voice began. "I am High Counselor Thex Mari of the Galactic Council, representing the 12 civilized races that govern this sector of the galaxy." Sarah and her team listened in stunned silence as the alien continued. "Your species has been observed expanding beyond your birth system and establishing settlements on worlds within Council-protected space. This expansion was conducted without permission and in violation of galactic law. Such behavior is typical of primitive species that have not yet learned to control their violent impulses." The transmission paused, and Sarah could hear her own heartbeat in the silence. "The Galactic Council has existed for over 2,000 of your years, maintaining peace and order among the civilized races. We have encountered species like yours before, young, aggressive, and driven by primitive instincts that lead inevitably to conflict and destruction. Some have learned to accept guidance and have found their place in the galactic community as protected species. Others have refused our wisdom and have been eliminated for the greater good." Sarah felt anger building in her chest, but she forced herself to remain calm and listen. "You will immediately withdraw all colonial expeditions from the 17 systems you have illegally occupied. You will surrender all faster-than-light technology and vessels to Council representatives. Your species will accept protected status under Council authority, with all technological advancements subject to Council approval. You have 30 standard galactic days to comply with these terms." The voice took on a darker tone. "Should you refuse these generous terms, your species will be classified as a galactic threat and dealt with accordingly. We have the power to reduce your homeworld to cosmic dust. We have done so before with species that proved too primitive to accept civilization. This is not a negotiation. This is your only opportunity to avoid extinction." The transmission ended, leaving Earth's leadership in stunned silence. President Williams of the Americas was the first to speak. "They're giving us an ultimatum. Submit or die." "They called us primitive," Chancellor Muller added angrily. "They want us to give up our colonies and our technology." Sarah studied the data her team had gathered during the transmission. The ship was powerful, that was clear, but something bothered her about the message. It seemed too rehearsed, too confident, like they had delivered it many times before. "They mentioned other species," she said thoughtfully. "Some that submitted, others that were destroyed. This is a pattern for them." "What are you thinking, Admiral?" asked Prime Minister Tanaka. Sarah looked at the faces on her screen, seeing fear but also determination. Humanity had survived ice ages, world wars, pandemics, and climate disasters. They had clawed their way from caves to the stars through sheer stubbornness and refusal to give up. I'm thinking they expect us to roll over like every other species, They've encountered, she said. They're so confident that they parked one ship in our orbit and gave us a month to surrender. You don't think we should consider their offer? President Williams asked. Sarah stood up and walked to her window, looking out at the city below. Millions of people going about their daily lives, unaware that aliens were demanding their submission. 15 years ago, we couldn't even leave our own solar system, she said. Now we have colonies on 17 worlds and ships that can cross the galaxy. We did that in 15 years, while these council species have been sitting on their technology for 2,000 years, growing fat and lazy. She turned back to face the screens. They called us primitive, but they don't understand what that word means when applied to humans. Primitive doesn't mean weak. It means we still remember how to fight. It means we haven't forgotten what it takes to survive when everything is against you. The room fell silent as the implications of her words sank in. Admiral, Chancellor Muller said carefully, are you suggesting we fight them? Sarah looked at each leader in turn, seeing the same thought forming in their minds. I'm suggesting we do what humans have always done when someone threatens our freedom, she said. We show them exactly what primitive means. Over the next 24 hours, emergency sessions were held in every capital on Earth. The debate was fierce but brief. Some argued for submission, pointing out the obvious technological advantage of their opponents. Others demanded defiance, refusing to bow to alien overlords. In the end, the vote was unanimous. Humanity would not submit. Admiral Chen stood before the cameras representing not just the United Defense Coalition, but all of humanity. Behind her, the flags of every nation on Earth created a backdrop of unity that the planet had rarely seen. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Coalition, she began, her voice steady and clear. We have received your ultimatum, High Counselor Thexmari, of the so-called Galactic Council. She paused, letting the weight of her next words settle. Humanity's response is simple. We reject your ultimatum. We reject your authority. And we reject your claim to rule over us or any other species. The transmission was broadcast not just to the alien ship, but across every human colony in the 17 disputed systems. You call us primitive, and perhaps by your standards we are. But you mistake primitive for weak, and that will be your first and last error. Humanity has never bowed to tyrants, whether they come from our own world or from the stars. Sarah's voice grew stronger with each word. You have 30 days to withdraw your ship from Earth orbit and recognize humanity's right to exist as a free and independent species. If you refuse, you will learn what it truly means to fight a primitive species that has never forgotten how to wage war. The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy with humanity's answer. They would not submit. They would fight. The silence from the alien ship lasted exactly 12 hours after Admiral Chen's transmission. Then High Counselor Thexmari responded, and his voice carried a tone of disbelief mixed with growing anger. Primitive species of Earth, your response demonstrates the savage nature we expected from your kind. No species has ever dared to reject the Council's generous offer of protection. Your arrogance will be noted in the historical records as we document your extinction. But humanity was already moving. Admiral Chen had not waited for the alien response before activating protocols that had been in development for over a decade. Deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, in a facility known only to the highest levels of Earth's government, Project Prometheus had been waiting for this moment. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, the project's lead scientist, stood before a massive holographic display showing the alien ship. Around her, teams of specialists worked frantically to analyze every piece of data they had gathered. What do we know? Admiral Chen asked as she entered the secure facility. More than they think we do, Dr. Harper replied. When they first appeared, they broadcast their transmission on multiple frequencies. Our deep space monitoring stations have been intercepting their communications for the past 18 months, ever since we established the colony on Kepler 442b. She manipulated the holographic display, showing intercepted signal patterns. Admiral, they've been watching us. But, more importantly, they've been talking to each other about us. Their language is complex, but our computers have been working on translation algorithms. We know they call themselves the Galactic Council, but what they haven't told us is that they're not as unified as they pretend to be. Explain, Chen said, studying the data streams. There are 12 species in their council, but they don't all agree about how to handle humanity. 3 of the species wanted to destroy us immediately. 4 wanted to study us first. 5 wanted to offer us the protection status they mentioned. Dr. Harper brought up another display showing the massive alien ship. This ship represents a compromise between their factions. It's powerful enough to destroy Earth, but it's also alone. They're testing us, Admiral. They want to see how we react before they commit their full resources. Admiral Chen smiled grimly. Then let's give them a reaction they'll never forget. Over the next week, humanity revealed the true extent of their preparations. For 15 years, ever since achieving faster-than-light travel, Earth's governments had been preparing for this possibility. They had built ships in secret, trained soldiers for space warfare, and developed weapons that pushed the boundaries of physics. The first indication of humanity's true capabilities came when the alien ship attempted to scan Earth's military installations. Their sensors were met with sophisticated jamming technology that not only blocked their scans but sent false information back to them. High Counselor Thexmari found himself staring at reports that made no sense. According to his sensors, Earth had fewer than 1,000 military vessels, mostly small patrol craft. The planet's defenses appeared minimal, consisting mainly of orbital platforms around major population centers. This cannot be accurate, he told his aide, a nervous creature from the Zilani species whose large eyes reflected his confusion. Surely a species capable of faster-than-light travel has better defenses than this. But Thexmari's confidence in Council superiority made him dismiss his concerns. Every species they had encountered before had folded quickly when faced with overwhelming power. Humans would be no different. He was wrong. On the 10th day after the ultimatum, Admiral Chen stood before the United Earth Assembly, addressing representatives from every nation and colony. The assembly had grown beyond its original scope, now including delegates from the 17 colonial worlds that the aliens demanded humanity abandon. Fellow humans, she began, we face a choice that will define our species for generations to come. We can submit to alien rule, accepting the status of protected primitives, or we can fight for our freedom and the right to determine our own destiny. The assembly listened in tense silence as she continued. I have reviewed the intelligence we have gathered about our opponents. The Galactic Council has existed for 2,000 years, maintaining peace through fear and overwhelming technological advantage. They are powerful, but they have grown complacent. She gestured to the holographic display behind her, showing the alien ship. They sent one ship to intimidate 8 billion humans and the populations of 17 colonial worlds. They gave us 30 days to surrender, believing we would collapse under the weight of their threat. They do not understand humanity's greatest strength. What is that strength, Admiral? Asked the delegate from the Mars colony. Our refusal to give up, Chen replied. Every species in their council accepted protection when faced with superior force. They learned to be grateful for their chains. But humans have a different history. We have never accepted that might makes right. We have fought against impossible odds and won. We have turned defeats into victories through sheer determination. She paused, looking out at the faces of humanity's representatives. The aliens call us primitive, and they are correct. We are primitive compared to species that have had thousands of years to develop their technology. But they mistake primitive for weak, and that is their fatal error. The delegate from Europa Station stood up. Admiral, what are you proposing? War, Chen replied simply. Not just resistance or defense, but total war against the Galactic Council. We will not accept their protection. We will not surrender our colonies. We will not bow to their authority. Assembly erupted in discussion, but Chen raised her hand for silence. I know the risks. They have superior technology and numbers. But they have never faced a species like humanity. They have never fought against beings who view warfare not as a last resort, but as a tool of survival that we have perfected over thousands of years of conflict. She manipulated the display showing Earth's hidden military installations. For 15 years we have been preparing for this moment. We have built fleets in the asteroid belts, trained armies on the outer moons, and developed weapons that our opponents cannot imagine. We have studied every form of warfare from ancient history to modern tactics. The display showed massive shipyards hidden in the shadows of Jupiter's moons, military bases carved into asteroids, and training facilities where human soldiers prepared for combat in zero gravity. The Galactic Council expects us to surrender, because every other species has done so. They do not understand that humans have a saying, give me liberty, or give me death. We would rather die fighting than live as slaves. The vote was taken that day, with representatives from every human world participating. The result was overwhelming. Humanity would fight. Admiral Chen stood once again before the cameras, But this time her message was different. Instead of defiance, she spoke with the calm confidence of someone who had made peace with war. High Counselor Thexmari, and members of the Galactic Council, she began. You have demanded our submission, calling us primitive and savage. You are correct on both counts. She paused, letting the words sink in. We are primitive. We have not forgotten the skills that allowed us to survive in a hostile universe for millions of years. We have not grown soft with centuries of peace. We remember what it takes to fight for survival. Her voice grew harder. We are savage. We wage war with a fury that comes from 10,000 years of conflict. We do not fight with honor or restraint. When our survival is at stake, we fight to win whatever the cost. Behind her, the flags of humanity's worlds created a backdrop of unity and determination. You wanted to see how primitives respond to threats. You are about to learn. As of this moment, humanity declares war on the Galactic Council. Not defense, not resistance, but war. Total war. The transmission reached not just the alien ship, but every corner of known space where Council species might be listening. We will not hide behind our world's gravity well. We will not wait for you to attack. We will bring the fight to you. And we will show you what it means to face a species that has never forgotten how to destroy its enemies. Chen's final words echoed across the galaxy. You have awakened something ancient and terrible. You have reminded humanity why we conquered our own world and reached for the stars. War is coming, and we are very, very good at it. High Counselor Thexmari stared at the tactical display aboard his command ship. The eternal judgment with growing disbelief. The human declaration of war had been broadcast across the galaxy, and the response from the Council worlds had been swift and predictable. Impossible, muttered Commander Zalak, his military advisor from the warrior Corvin species. No primitive species declares war on the entire Council. They must be bluffing. But Thexmari was not so sure. Something in the human admiral's voice had carried a certainty that troubled him. Still, the Council had faced rebellious species before, and the solution was always the same: overwhelming force applied quickly and decisively. Send word to the 4th Battle Fleet, he commanded. Tell Admiral Vorthak to make an example of the human colony on Kepler 442b. A swift, decisive strike will show these primitives the futility of resistance. What Thexmari did not know was that humanity had been expecting exactly this response. On Kepler 442b, a rocky world rich in rare metals that humanity had been mining for 3 years, Governor Marcus Webb stood in the command center buried deep beneath the planet's surface. Around him, holographic displays showed the approaching Council fleet, 15 heavy cruisers, 30 destroyers, and a massive dreadnought that served as their flagship. Sir, the Council fleet will reach orbit in 6 hours, reported Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Martinez, the planet's military commander. All civilian evacuations are complete. We have 43,000 volunteer defenders ready for the operation. Webb nodded grimly. The evacuation had been offered to every colonist when the war began. To his surprise, less than 10% had chosen to leave. The rest had volunteered to stay and fight, transforming the mining colony into something the Galactic Council had never encountered before: a fortress world inhabited entirely by warriors. Signal Earth, Webb ordered. Tell Admiral Chen that Operation Anvil is ready to begin. The Council fleet, under the command of Admiral Vorthak of the militant hegemony species, approached Kepler 442b with the confidence born of 2,000 years of easy victories. Their sensors showed a lightly defended world with minimal orbital defenses and what appeared to be a few thousand frightened colonists hiding in underground shelters. Begin the bombardment, Admiral Vorthak ordered. Target the mining installations and population centers. We will make this quick and decisive. The first surprise came when the Council ships opened fire. Their energy weapons, designed to reduce cities to ash, struck the planet's surface and simply disappeared. Underground, the colonists watched their energy absorption grid drain power from the alien weapons and feed it into their own defensive systems. Energy shields holding at 97%, reported the defense coordinator. Their weapons are actually charging our systems. Phase 1 complete, Governor Webb announced calmly. Begin Phase 2. Across the planet's surface, what the Council had assumed were simple mining installations revealed their true nature. Massive railguns disguised as ore processing facilities emerged from underground bunkers and opened fire on the alien fleet. But these were not ordinary weapons. Human engineers had spent 3 years turning the planet's entire metal output into projectiles, creating solid tungsten rods the size of telephone poles and launching them at significant fractions of light speed. The first salvo took the Council fleet completely by surprise. 3 destroyers simply ceased to exist, vaporized by kinetic impacts that their energy shields had never been designed to stop. The remaining ships scrambled to reorganize, but humanity had more surprises waiting. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures across the planet's surface," reported a panicked Corvin sensor operator. Admiral Vorthak looked at his tactical display in growing horror as hundreds of launch signatures appeared simultaneously. The humans were firing everything they had, turning their entire world into a weapons platform. "Impossible," he breathed. No species would militarize an entire planet. But humanity had done exactly that. Every mineshaft had been converted into a missile silo. Every processing plant had been turned into a weapons factory. Every colonist had trained for this moment, when they would turn their world into a weapon aimed at the heart of galactic civilization. The second wave of attacks came not from the surface, but from space itself. What the Council had dismissed, as debris fields and asteroid clusters revealed themselves to be human ships, disguised and waiting. Dozens of fighters and gunboats that had been hiding in the system's asteroid belt opened fire simultaneously. But the humans were not fighting, like any species the Council had ever encountered. Their ships moved erratically, breaking formation to attack from impossible angles. Their weapons targeted not the heavily armored main sections of Council ships, but critical systems, sensor arrays, communication equipment, engine mountings. "They are fighting like pirates," Admiral Vorthak complained to his staff as another of his cruisers went dark, its command systems destroyed by a precisely placed missile strike. What he did not understand was that humans had learned from every form of warfare in their history. They fought like pirates when piracy tactics worked, like berserkers when fury was needed, and like scientists when precision mattered. The battle raged for 18 hours, but the outcome was decided in the first 30 minutes when the Council fleet realized they were not fighting a conventional military force, but something entirely different. A species that had turned warfare into an art form. The turning point came when Governor Webb activated the final phase of humanity's defense. Deep beneath Kepler 442b's surface, in mines that reached nearly to the planet's core, nuclear charges that had been placed over months of preparation detonated simultaneously. The explosions were not meant to destroy the planet, but to destabilize it. Massive volcanic eruptions began across the planet's surface as the carefully placed charges fractured tectonic plates and released the pressure from underground magma chambers. "By the ancient gods," whispered Admiral Vorthak as he watched the planet below transform into a hellish landscape of lava and ash. "They are destroying their own world." But the humans had calculated everything perfectly. The volcanic eruption sent massive clouds of superheated gas and debris into orbit, creating a natural weapon that no Council technology could counter. Ships that had been designed to fight in the vacuum of space found themselves engulfed in clouds of molten rock traveling at orbital velocities. The Eternal Judgment, Admiral Vorthak's flagship, was struck by a particularly large chunk of volcanic debris that tore through its hull like paper. Emergency systems triggered across the ship as atmosphere rushed out through the breach. "Retreat!" Admiral Vorthak screamed as his bridge filled with smoke. "All ships, retreat immediately!" But humanity was not finished. As the surviving Council ships tried to flee the system, they found their escape route blocked by more human vessels that had been waiting in hyperspace. The retreating fleet flew directly into a carefully prepared ambush. Of the 45 ships that had entered the Kepler 442 system, only 7 escaped to carry word back to the Galactic Council. The rest were destroyed or captured, their crews either killed in battle or taken prisoner by humans who treated them with a courtesy that somehow made their defeat even more humiliating. But the most devastating blow to Council morale was not the military defeat, but what happened next. The humans broadcast the entire battle across the galaxy, showing Council citizens exactly how their mighty fleet had been destroyed by primitive colonists defending their world. The broadcast included interviews with human defenders, ordinary miners and farmers who spoke calmly about their preparations and their willingness to die for freedom. They showed the captured Council officers being treated with respect and medical care, demonstrating that humanity could be both savage in war and civilized in victory. "We did not want this war," Governor Webb said in his message to the galaxy. "We offered peace and cooperation, but when faced with slavery or death, humans will always choose to fight. This is what happens when you threaten our freedom." The message ended with footage of the human survivors standing among the ruins of their world, already beginning to rebuild. The planet was scarred and nearly uninhabitable, but the colonists remained, turning the devastated landscape into a symbol of human determination. "We will rebuild," Webb concluded. "We will make this world stronger than before, and if the Council wants to try again, they will find us ready." Across the galaxy, the reaction to the Battle of Kepler 442b was immediate and dramatic. For 2,000 years, the Galactic Council had maintained peace through the certainty that resistance was futile. Now, for the first time, a primitive species had not only resisted but won a decisive victory. On Council worlds, citizens who had never known war watched the footage with fascination and growing fear. Some began to question whether the Council's protection was worth the price of their freedom. Others demanded that humanity be destroyed immediately, before their rebellion could spread. But among the Council's leadership, a different emotion was taking hold: respect mixed with terror. High Counselor Thexmari studied the battle reports with growing understanding that humanity was unlike any species they had ever encountered. "Admiral," his aide asked nervously, "what are your orders?" The news of humanity's victory at Kepler 442b reached Earth 18 days after the battle, carried by one of the fastest courier ships in human space. Admiral Chen stood in the Situation Room, watching the recorded footage of the battle with a mixture of pride and grim satisfaction. 43,000 volunteers held off a Council fleet 45 ships strong, she said to her assembled staff. "They proved that humans don't just fight to survive. We fight to win." But Chen knew that the victory, impressive as it was, would only anger the Council further. Intelligence reports were already coming in about massive fleet movements throughout Council space. The aliens were mobilizing for total war, bringing together forces that could sterilize hundreds of worlds. "Ma'am," her aide reported, "we're receiving surrender offers from 12 different human colonies. They're terrified of what the Council might do in retaliation." Chen nodded grimly. Fear was a natural response, but humanity had moved beyond natural responses when they chose to fight an enemy that controlled half the galaxy. "Send them the same message we're sending to everyone," she replied. "War has begun. There is no surrender, no negotiation, and no mercy for those who threaten human freedom. But there is something else." She gestured to the massive holographic display that filled the center of the room, showing star charts that extended far beyond human space. "There is victory. Show them Operation Prometheus." For 15 years, while humanity had been establishing colonies and exploring new worlds, they had also been preparing for war. Deep in the asteroid belts of a dozen systems, massive shipyards had been constructed in secret. Automated factories built into hollow asteroids had been producing warships at a rate that would have shocked even Earth's own governments. But more importantly, humanity had been studying war itself. Every conflict in human history had been analyzed and cataloged. Every successful strategy had been adapted for space combat. Every lesson learned in blood on Earth had been transformed into doctrine for the battles to come. The first indication of humanity's true capabilities came 3 weeks after Kepler 442b, when Council long-range sensors detected what appeared to be a massive asteroid moving at impossible speeds toward the Vega system, home to the Council's largest shipyard. "Impossible," muttered Chief Science Officer Korath of the analytical Zephyrian species as he studied the readings. Asteroids do not accelerate to near light speed on their own. But this was no asteroid. It was humanity's first strike in what would become known as the Human War, and it demonstrated a level of tactical thinking that the Council had never encountered. The asteroid was actually a hollowed-out chunk of iron ore, 50 kilometers across and filled with the most destructive cargo humans could devise. Antimatter warheads surrounded by layers of conventional explosives, kinetic penetrators, and a small crew of volunteers who had accepted that this would be a one-way mission. When it reached the Vega system, the asteroid split apart, revealing not one massive projectile but thousands of smaller ones, each guided by its own navigation system and programmed with specific targets. The Council's orbital shipyards, which had been building warships for 2 millennia, were destroyed in the span of 30 minutes. But the psychological impact was even greater than the physical destruction. Along with the attack, the humans broadcast a message that sent shockwaves throughout Council space. "Citizens of the Galactic Council," Admiral Chen's voice echoed across every communication channel in the system. "For 2,000 years, you have lived under the protection of the Council, believing that their power made you safe. Today, you learn the truth." The broadcast showed footage of the shipyard's destruction. Massive structures that had seemed permanent and invincible reduced to scattered debris. There is no safety in submission. There is no security in slavery. The Council's power exists only as long as you believe in it. Today that belief dies. But Chen was not finished. We did not choose this war, but we will finish it. The Council demands that humanity surrender our freedom, our colonies, and our future. Instead, we offer the Council a choice: recognize our right to exist as a free species, or face the consequences of threatening a race that has never learned to accept defeat. The message included something that no Council species had ever heard before: a detailed history of human warfare, starting with ancient battles fought with spears and shields, progressing through the mechanized slaughter of 2 world wars, and culminating in the nuclear standoff that had nearly destroyed Earth. This is who we are, Chen continued as images of human battles played across Council screens. We are the species that turned warfare into science. We are the race that learned to split atoms and build weapons that could destroy worlds. We are the civilization that looked into the abyss of nuclear war and stepped back. Not because we feared death, but because we learned to control our own destructive power. The broadcast concluded with a promise that chilled Council leadership to their cores. You wanted to see primitives at war. You are about to witness the full fury of a species that has perfected the art of destruction over 10,000 years of conflict. This is not a threat. This is a warning. Surrender now or face the consequences. The destruction of the Vega shipyards was just the beginning. Over the following months, humanity revealed the true extent of their war preparations. Fleets that had been hidden throughout the galaxy began striking Council targets with precision and ferocity that shocked even veteran military commanders. But humans did not fight like any species the Council had encountered before. They did not mass their fleets for grand battles or attempt to hold territory. Instead, they waged a campaign of calculated destruction that targeted the Council's ability to make war. Supply convoys disappeared in hyperspace, their escorts found. Weeks later, as drifting hulks with no survivors and no clues about what had attacked them, communication networks were infiltrated and corrupted, sending false orders that led Council fleets into carefully prepared ambushes. Industrial worlds found their factories sabotaged by infiltrators who seemed to appear from nowhere and vanish just as quickly. Most terrifying of all, humans proved to be masters of psychological warfare. They broadcast recordings of Council officers they had captured, not tortured or broken, but simply interviewed. The prisoners spoke of human tactics, human determination, and human capabilities, with a respect that bordered on fear. They do not fight for conquest or glory, reported Admiral Korthak of the hegemony species after being released in a prisoner exchange. They fight for survival, and they are very, very good at it. They study their enemies, learn their weaknesses, and exploit them without mercy or hesitation. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the human war effort was their willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. When the Council siege fleet surrounded the human colony on Proxima Centauri b, expecting the colonists to surrender rather than face annihilation, they instead found a population that had spent months preparing for exactly this scenario. The colonists had evacuated their children and elderly to hidden shelters, then transformed their entire world into a trap. When the Council fleet entered orbit, they found themselves facing not desperate civilians but trained soldiers who had turned every building, every vehicle, and every scrap of technology into a weapon. The battle lasted 6 months with Council forces slowly grinding their way through defensive positions that had been prepared with painstaking care. But just as the aliens reached the colonists' final stronghold, the humans activated their ultimate weapon, the planet itself. Over the preceding months, the colonists had been placing shaped nuclear charges at critical points in the planet's crust. When detonated simultaneously, they created a chain reaction that split the world in half, destroying the entire Council fleet in a catastrophic explosion that could be seen from neighboring star systems. The message that accompanied this act of ultimate defiance was broadcast throughout the galaxy by the few colonist ships that had escaped before the detonation. "This is the price of threatening humanity," the message declared. "We would rather die free than live as slaves. We would rather destroy our own worlds than surrender them to tyrants. This is what it means to fight a species that values freedom more than life itself." Across the galaxy, the reaction to the destruction of Proxima Centauri b was immediate and dramatic. Some Council species, horrified by humanity's willingness to destroy entire worlds rather than surrender, demanded immediate negotiations to end the war. Others, terrified by the implications of facing such fanatical opponents, called for the complete extermination of humanity before their rebellion could spread further. But among the subject races of the Council, those species that had accepted protection in exchange for freedom, a different reaction was taking hold. For the first time in 2,000 years, they were seeing resistance succeed. They were witnessing a species that refused to bow, refused to surrender, and refused to accept that their freedom was not worth fighting for. On 17 different worlds, subject species began to question their acceptance of council rule. Underground, movements formed, sharing human broadcasts and planning their own acts of resistance. The galaxy was beginning to remember what it meant to be free. The largest fleet in galactic history assembled at the edge of the Sol system, a vast armada of over 3,000 ships representing the combined military might of the Galactic Council. High Counselor Thexmari stood aboard his flagship, the Final Judgment, staring at the tactical displays that showed the blue jewel of Earth hanging defenseless in space. No orbital fortresses, reported his tactical officer. No defensive fleets in position. Their homeworld appears to be completely undefended. Thexmari frowned. After months of warfare against an enemy that seemed to appear from nowhere and strike without warning, he found the apparent helplessness of Earth suspicious. But Council intelligence confirmed that humanity had committed their entire fleet to defending their scattered colonies. Earth itself had been left with only a handful of patrol vessels. Perhaps they believed we would not strike at their homeworld directly, suggested Admiral Korath, the Zephyrian commander of the Science Division. Many species consider attacks on birthworlds to be barbaric. Then they do not understand the Council, Thexmari replied coldly. We will end this war by destroying the source of human resistance. Once Earth falls, their scattered colonies will surrender. But as the massive fleet moved toward Earth, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center buried beneath the Swiss Alps, watching their approach with calm satisfaction. Around her, thousands of technicians monitored systems that had been built for this exact moment. Council fleet has passed the outer sensor ring, reported Colonel Martinez. They're maintaining standard formation, no signs of caution. Excellent, Chen replied. They still think like conquerors rather than warriors. Activate Phase 1. Across the solar system, humanity's true defenses revealed themselves. What the Council had dismissed as mining equipment in the asteroid belt suddenly powered up, revealing massive railguns that had been disguised as ore processors. The research stations orbiting Jupiter opened their weapon ports, showing themselves to be heavily armed battle platforms. Even the space elevators on Earth's surface began to transform, their support cables retracting to reveal the massive kinetic weapons hidden within their structures. By all the ancient gods, whispered Admiral Korath as his sensors registered the true scope of Earth's defenses. The entire system is a fortress, but Thexmari had come too far to retreat now. All ships attack formation, he commanded. Destroy everything that moves. The Battle of Sol began with the largest exchange of fire in galactic history. 3,000 Council ships opened fire simultaneously, their energy weapons creating a light show that could be seen from the outer planets. But humanity's response was unlike anything the Council had ever experienced. Instead of meeting the attack head-on, Earth's defenders fought like guerrilla warriors on an interplanetary scale. The asteroid belt became a maze of crossfire as hidden weapons platforms struck from multiple directions. Ships that seemed to be fleeing suddenly turned and attacked, revealing themselves to be decoys disguised as freighters, but armed with weapons that could cripple capital ships. They are everywhere, reported a panicked Corvan captain as his cruiser was bracketed by fire from 3 different directions. We cannot tell which targets are real. But the most devastating aspect of humanity's defense was not their weapons, but their tactics. They had studied this battle for 15 years, running countless simulations and preparing for every possible Council strategy. They knew exactly how their enemies would attack, and they had prepared accordingly. Council fleet is committing to full assault on Earth itself, reported the tactical coordinator. They're ignoring our outer defenses and making a direct run for the planet. Chen smiled. Just as predicted, activate Luna Base. What the Council had assumed was a simple research installation on Earth's moon suddenly revealed itself as the largest weapons platform ever constructed by any species. The moon's surface opened like flower petals, exposing a massive cannon that had been built into the satellite's core over the course of a decade. The Luna cannon fired once, sending a projectile the size of a city block at 90% light speed directly into the heart of the Council formation. The kinetic impact vaporized 17 ships instantly and crippled dozens more. But more importantly, it demonstrated that humanity had been preparing for this battle since the day they first reached the stars. High Counselor Thexmari watched, his flagship's displays in growing horror as his grand fleet was systematically dismantled by an enemy that seemed to anticipate his every move. Wherever he sent his ships, the humans were ready. Every formation he tried was countered by defensive positions that had clearly been prepared specifically to defeat that exact tactic. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth." Admiral Chen's face appeared on the main screen, and Texamari was struck by the complete absence of fear in her expression. She looked like someone who had been waiting for this moment her entire life. "High Counselor," she began, "you came here to destroy humanity's heart. But you made the same mistake that every tyrant in human history has made. You assumed that our strength came from our technology or our numbers." Behind her, displays showed the battle raging throughout the solar system, with council ships being destroyed faster than they could advance. "Our strength comes from something you have never understood: the willingness to sacrifice everything for freedom. Every human in this system volunteered to be here, knowing they might die in defense of our homeworld. But more than that, they volunteered to prove that some things are worth more than life itself." The transmission shifted to show other parts of the battle, where human ships were ramming council vessels in suicidal attacks that nevertheless crippled or destroyed their targets. "You call us primitive, and you are right. We are the primitives, who never forgot that freedom must be earned with blood. We are the savages who refuse to bow to superior force. We are the barbarians who would rather die fighting than live in chains." Texamari tried to respond, but Chen continued speaking. "But we are also the species that learned to harness nuclear fire, to split atoms, and to reach for the stars despite every obstacle in our path. We are the race that turned our own moon into a weapon and our entire solar system into a fortress. We are the civilization that has been preparing for this moment since the day we first looked up at the night sky and wondered what else might be out there." The display shifted again, showing the massive casualties the Council fleet was suffering, as humanity's defenses tore through their formations with ruthless efficiency. "You have lost this battle, High Counselor. You have lost this war. But I am going to offer you something that no Council species has ever offered another: mercy." Texamari stared at the screen in disbelief. "Call off your remaining ships," Chen continued. "Order them to withdraw from Sol system. In exchange, humanity will offer you terms for ending this war." "Terms?" Texamari managed to say. "You dare offer terms to the Galactic Council?" "We offer terms to a dying institution that has forgotten the difference between strength and tyranny," Chen replied. "The Council's age is ending, High Counselor. The question is whether it will end in destruction or transformation." For several minutes, Texamari said nothing, watching as his fleet continued to be decimated by human defenses that seemed inexhaustible. Finally, he gave the order that no Council commander had ever given before: "All ships, withdraw to minimum safe distance. Ceasefire." The Battle of Sol ended not with humanity's defeat, but with the Council's first military surrender in 2,000 years. The survivors of the once mighty fleet limped away from Earth's gravity well, their confidence shattered, and their belief in Council superiority destroyed forever. But Admiral Chen was not finished. 3 days later, she broadcast a message that would reshape the galaxy. "Citizens of all species," she began, speaking not just to humanity, but to every intelligent race that could receive the transmission. "The war between humanity and the Galactic Council is over, but something greater is beginning." The transmission showed images from across the galaxy: subject species rising in rebellion, Council fleets surrendering without a fight, and ancient grievances finally finding voice after millennia of suppression. For 2,000 years, the Council has maintained order through fear and submission. They convinced you that freedom was too dangerous, that independence would lead to chaos and war. They were wrong. She gestured to displays showing human worlds, scarred by battle but rebuilding with determination and hope. "We offer you a different vision of galactic civilization, not one ruled by the strong over the weak, but one where all species stand as equals. Not one maintained by force, but one built on cooperation and mutual respect." The transmission included detailed proposals for a new form of galactic government, a federation where every species, regardless of their technological level or military power, would have an equal voice in determining their collective future. "We do not seek to rule you," Chen concluded. "We seek to stand beside you. We offer not protection, but partnership, not submission, but alliance between free beings who choose their own destiny." The response was immediate and overwhelming.